track. I'm Tedward, and today, thanks to Bond Group in Waltham, Massachusetts, on this perfect New England spring day, we're driving one of my favorite GT cruisers. This is a 1969 Ferrari 365 GT 2+2. It's powered by a Colombo V12, 4.4 liters of displacement, single overhead cams, one cam per bank. And it makes about 320 horsepower, sending all of its power through a 5-speed transmission to a limited slip differential in the back. It's room for everybody, and it's outrageously comfortable. It has a independent rear suspension, so it soaks up the bumps and manages corners just fine. Its power steering is light and supple, and it has such a rev-happy, eager engine. I'm really excited to show you all of the sights and sounds. Sometimes when we're thinking of Ferraris, of course, Pininfarina designs always jump out to us, but this style doesn't instantly tell somebody Ferrari if they're not Ferrari people. 365s, I think, are always like a little strange in that way, other than the Daytona. The Daytona everybody recognizes, but 365s, whether it be a GT or a GTC4, I think it takes a little bit of explaining about what they are. But I tell you, every time I drive a 365, whether it's a quad cam or one of these guys, they are just such a joy. They sound fantastic, they're supple, they're seamless, they're smooth, and they just want to run on the highway at triple-digit speeds, which unfortunately I can't show you. But this is a really great example of one of these cars, and I do think that the market still has them slightly undervalued or maybe underloved, because the last one we drove, it was a couple years ago, but I believe it sold, the red one sold on Bring a Trailer for under $170,000. And I will say, I've driven plenty of Ferraris, and this is a very good driving experience, and I know that 200 grand is nothing to scoff at, but there's something about these that just does the trick. So let me show you around a little bit. We've got the Cromodoro wheels with the knockoff centers. These are gorgeous. I love a 1960s, 70s 5-spoke design, especially from Ferrari. And it's wrapped in a 205 section tire on these 15-inch wheels. Let me actually get this thing started for you, because we should probably do the walk around with this gentle idle purr. All right, to get it started, we've got our key and our ignition here. Typically here our fuel pump, but we were just running. Don't be fooled by the jittery tack. This is smooth as butter. Oh my God, and the horn is perfect. All right, let me show you under the hood. We've got our hood release here. This is always a tricky thing to do after the car's been running, just because this hood, not only does the sun heat up the hood, but this engine heats up this hood, and there's a little hood latch right down here, and I'm gonna burn my fingers on. There we go. Then we gotta play hot potato. And there we go. There's the heart of our GT Ferrari, and this is always a joy. You've got the engine number down here, 245. Makes it really easy to determine and assess if this is a matching numbers car, because you've got the plate over there. It says 365 GT with the engine number 245, and then the chassis number, which would essentially be your VIN. So you can quickly cross-reference what's on the chassis versus what's under the hood and know, hey, are we getting a matching numbers car? Around back with our quad ANSA tips. Oh my goodness. That sounds so choice. All right, the other thing that I love about this car is kind of the luxury items about it. It has power windows, okay, sure, but check this out. It even has power glass for that front section. That is so trick, and Ferraris love to do little things like this. There's older Ferraris that actually have little levers that would open the passenger door. I think the 500, the Ferrari 500 maybe does that, or 400 Superfast, one of those cars. I'm sorry, I forget. I get confused. These cars can get really difficult, especially 365s, because there's so many variations of 365s. This is the successor to the 330 GT, and I love the 330 GT. That's one of my favorite cars, especially a GTC, the short wheelbase, the 2-seater. Those are just a joy. But Enzo loved a big V12 front engine Ferrari, and not necessarily the crazy sports cars. And I think I get it, because this is a real pleasurable thing to operate. So let's close it up and take it for a ride. I can already hear your fingers typing. Are those Fram oil filters? Well, a lot of people do put Fram oil filters. Those aren't even labeled. I think those are just the housings. But you know, a lot of times you'll open these and you will see either orange or matte black that kind of match the valve covers. To open the trunk, not that one. 2 levers down there. I'm 50% right. Anyway, here's our trunk. Loads of space in here. Let's get this plate on and we'll go for a drive. The rear occupants get a great space. It's kind of like a couch and a divider, so maybe no funny business back there, but room for adults to sit comfortably on the road from country to country if you're doing some inter-European continental travel. We do have some semblance of safety with this lap belt and shoulder belt combination. I don't know how much I trust it, but it's something. And then parking brake down here. We're starting to get our oil temp coming up. Water temp's looking good. Pressure, lovely. That's what we want to see. I'm going to get a tiny bit closer to these pedals. That's good. And there is our 5-speed manual gearbox, right front and center. 250 era dashboards were probably the peak in my opinion, but these with the wood are still lovely, but there is just something a little bit missing when it comes to the jewelry of these dashboards, and I think that might be one of those factors that sort of keeps the values of these down a little bit. I'm not totally sure what it is, but I do still think this is beautiful. It gives you all the correct information. It's worth showing you the low speed crawl in first gear just because the sound. It's so theatrical, but it's not in your face. Roush Mustang. Pretty big. It's about 5 meters long, but it's not that heavy, and 320 horsepower goes quite a long way in making this thing rip. Four-wheel disc brakes help bring it down to earth after you've enjoyed a little romp. And when we go over some of this harsher road, this is where you start to really appreciate the driving dynamics of the suspension. It absorbs everything. Part of it is because you've got massive sidewalls, because you've got big old tires on 15-inch wheels. The other side is that light steering, supple suspension. It just absorbs all of it. Amazing is just how refined GT Ferraris got over the years. 250s, while wonderful driving experiences, for me that's more about powertrain. It's about enjoying that Colombo V12 more so than the driving dynamics of a 250. It's nothing against the 250, it's just a bit agricultural. It's just the style, it's how it is. It's a 1950s car. This, however, this is really refined. Everything seems to be dialed properly. The steering is just perfect because it's light, it's easy, it's direct. The steering ratio is really lovely. The suspension is supple. All of it just comes together into a car that feels luxurious and refined, and then it's matched by this ultra smooth, rev happy V12 that, listen to this. It's so direct. This is something completely missing from modern cars today, is the ability to feel exactly what's happening instantaneously through your right foot. There are cars that do a better job than others, but a computer between your foot and an engine just isn't the same. And I'm not trying to wax poetic and just say how things used to be better. I'm just saying this is objectively better. So little effort to drive this car quickly and feel composed. It gives you a lot of confidence. And I love this shifter because it's super tall, which when you look at it, you're thinking like, well, I don't know about that, but the distance between steering wheel and shifter is just dead on. It kind of reminds me of like a Carrera GT where it's right there, sort of in the dashboard. And I can always just go, get my shift, go right back to the wheel, get my shift, back to the wheel. Very little mirror, and while I was 99% sure I was clear to make that pass, I wasn't 100% sure. And in a car like this, you don't test those waters. Everything you do in a car like this is done only with 100% certainty, never 99%. So in that case, we'll shut it down and bring it back to earth for a second. What a highway ripper this thing is. You could just consume a continent behind the wheel of this. Find some quieter B roads out here. Talk about what makes this thing so special. Its design is beautiful. It's very sleek and low and kind of cat-like. But that also serves a great purpose because this front end is incredibly low. This cowl just disappears. So despite it being kind of a long front end, I've got road just in front of me. I have such incredible visibility. Kind of has that McLaren F1 vibe to it where it all just drops off in front of the windshield. Makes it incredibly easy to place on the road. Its driving characteristics, honestly, better than the car looks. I think it's a beautiful car, but sometimes you get into beautiful vintage cars and they just don't quite drive as good as they look. I think this drives better than it looks. I think this is the kind of Ferrari I would want to own as a vintage classic because I'm getting a bunch of different things out of it. I'm getting a great V12 that sounds the part and revs the part and behaves like a rev-happy little monster. That's what I imagine the Ferrari experience to be. But I'm also getting really luxurious and supple experience from the suspension in this chassis. And I'm not trying to go out and win any races. Sometimes when you're driving sort of like the race car variants of things from days of yore, it's like, and for what, right? Like, it's great as a historical piece or a discussion about where technology was, but this is drivable in 2025 today. You could drive this to work, you could take it on a long trip, you could take it to car shows. You can do all the things a Ferrari should do, but it's also gonna be an enjoyable experience while you're doing it. That's a winning combination for ownership. How many collections do you see with wild historical vintage type race cars and like basically nobody drives them because they're actually very uncomfortable or difficult or cumbersome? It's just all too common. And this 365 GT, it gives you all the Ferrari experience you want, and it's easily accessible. Look at the visibility out of this thing. Oh my goodness. It's a very risky yield sign right there. No problems in this because I can actually see. It's basically zero obstruction back there. So I'm gonna go bring this back to Bond Group and dream about Ferrari ownership. This is one that like kind of could be had just because it is in the realm of affordability. I know that's not, you know, I know the $200,000 range isn't nothing. I don't know what this will actually sell for. But when you're talking about a V12 GT Ferrari experience that's actually good to drive, like genuinely a good thing to drive today, that you can just jump in and go, it sounds about right. So, thank you guys so much for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing. Thanks to Bond Group for tossing the keys to this bad boy. Don't you forget to respect the drive, and I'll see you in the next one.